Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We, Annie Singla and Shivani Chouhan, the research scholars from Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management at Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India, warmly greet all dignitaries, guests, and delegates with great joy and immense exultation. We feel privileged to extend our warm welcome to all presented here at the very first pre-conference webinar event entitled Green Recovery of MSMEs of 5th World Congress on Disaster Management. WCDM is a unique initiative of DMICS to bring researchers, policymakers, and practitioners from around the world on the same platform to discuss various challenging issues of disaster risk management. I am glad to share that today's event launches the series of pre-conference webinar of WCDM. To begin with, firstly, let me introduce our organizers, Arise India, SADRI, and the Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management of IIT Roorkee. Arise is UNDRR-led network of private sector entities whose members voluntarily commit to align with Sendai framework. Arise India, with secretariat in FICCI, was launched on 18th March 2019 in New Delhi. Arise India's fourfold strategy includes innovation and research, new technologies to include artificial intelligence and robotics, mapping traditional practices, and capacity building of industries, both in private and public sectors. Over to you, Shivani.
SADRI stands for the South Asia Alliance of Disaster Research Institute. It started with members from 5 South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. On 6 November 2020, Director of IIT Roorkee, Professor A.K. Chaturvedi, announced the inauguration of SADRI in CoEDMM IIT Roorkee. The SADRI aims to deepen the understanding of disasters in the South Asia region, including climate change impact, learn from evidence-based lessons, investigate and resolve implementation challenges to achieve better resilient infrastructure and technology adoption system, improve livelihood of people and promote societal safety culture by integrating knowledge and technology. Now, the Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management, IIT Roorkee, was established in 2005 to enable a more resilient society. With a strong emphasis on techno-managerial skills, the center is facilitating cutting-edge cross-sectional research and conduct training on disaster risk, hazard, and vulnerability mapping, and their mitigation and pre- and post-disaster management. The center started a multidisciplinary post-graduation program on disaster management and mitigation since the year 2012.
Now moving further, let me introduce you to a very dynamic personality, Dr. Pj Dhaar Chakravarti, a disaster management professional with experience of working at local, state, national, regional, and global level for more than 3 decades. He was Executive Director of the National Institute of Disaster Management and Secretary of the National Disaster Management Authority of India. In addition, he was Founding Director of SARC Disaster Management Center. He was involved with the UNISDR expert group for developing indicators for measuring the progress of implementing Hyogo as well as Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. He has played a very pivotal role in WCDM. He is the Chairman, Scientific and Technical Committee of WCDM 2021. It is my pleasure to invite Dr. Pj Dhaar Chakravarti on board to share a few words with us.
Everybody, so welcome you all to this first in the series of the webinars as a prelude to the 5th World Congress on Disaster Management, or WCDM 2021 as we call it. Now WCDM is a platform which brings together researchers, policymakers, and practitioners from all over the world to discuss some of the important issues on building resilience to disasters. So this is the 5th edition of the WCDM. Our earlier versions were in Mumbai and Visakhapatnam and Hyderabad cities. Now this webinar, this conference, the overarching theme is finance, technology, and capacity for building resilience to disasters. Now these are the 3 critical issues: technology, finance, and capacity, where we find there are constraints, and the constraints for the implementation of the 2030 development agenda, the Sendai framework, the Paris Agreement on climate change, the new urban agenda, and so on. So these are the 3 critical issues that were identified in our Mumbai conference. So we decided that we will be focusing our discussion in WCDM, 5th WCDM, on these 3 issues. So we have about 7 plenary sessions, about 50 technical sessions, about 8 special technical sessions, and 6 special feature events structured around that theme, which will be deliberated on or during 4 days, 24th to 27th November. And we are expecting about 2,000 participants from all over the world in a hybrid mode. The physical participation will be limited to about 300 people because of the restrictions on the travel and the restrictions on the assembly of large gatherings by the government. But we are expecting a lot of participation on a virtual mode. So I'll not take much of my time. So I hope that this webinar would be successful and will be, this I have said, is the first in the series of 12 webinars. And the details of these webinars are there posted in our website. And we are organizing these webinars in collaboration with our knowledge partners in India and abroad. So I'm very happy to welcome you all again in this first in the series of the webinars. So thank you so much for attending it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for briefing us about the WCDM and its upcoming events. Let me now introduce Brigadier Dr. BK Khanna, organizer and CEO of Arise India. He was the former founder, senior advisor, cum consultant at NDMA for nearly 10 years. Before that, he was in NIDM for 2 years as senior consultant, Army for 33 years, and in BSF for 6 years. Fought the 1971 Bangladesh War, OP Pavan, Sri Lanka, Kargil, and in numerous counter-insurgency areas of India. He received 8 Gallantry and Distinguished Services Award from the President of India, including the Sena Medal and 2 times Vishisht Seva Medal. He had written 3 books on DM, 375 articles, and conducted 2100 mock exercises. I would like to call Brigadier Dr. BK Khanna to welcome and set the tone for the webinar.
Thank you, Shivani, for the kind words, for which, of course, I give the credit to my colleagues with whom I had served. Good evening, friends. At the outset, I would like to thank the chairman and the members of the scientific and the technical committee of the WCDM to give Arise India, IIT Roorkee, and Sadri an opportunity to organize the first pre-conference webinar on the green recovery of MSME domain. We have tried to get the best available speakers on the subject who have got the varied experience from the academia and research to the hands-on knowledge, and from UN level to parliamentarian and to the industry's inputs. We thank them all for accepting our offer to grace the webinar. Heartiest welcome to our esteemed speakers. Why we chose this subject? As you all know, COVID-19 is the first global crisis which is threatening the very human existence after the Second World War. Its impact on lives and livelihood globally are beyond measure as the war against the virus is continuing. As per the ILO, about 400 million people, that is approximately 76.2% of the total workforce in the informal sector in India, would be at risk of poverty due to the unknown duration and the severe economic impact. Cities, industries, and the businesses are in turmoil. It has impacted 53% of India's business operations. MSMEs who had not specifically catered for such a highly contagious epidemic, they have suffered the maximum. Their migrant workers, contract and daily wagers were left without a job and bleak future. Pandemic reportedly caused 80% decrease in the cash flow. Those who had taken the loan were doubly worried, as the interest rates in India, of course, they were not postponed, but they were only waived off. I mean, they were not waived off, but only postponed. With no income, loan EMI payments overdue, salaries of workers had to be paid, and payments for the new raw material all overwhelmed a number of them. Many got into the insolvency before, of course, the government came with a package to revive the MSMEs, which of course did help to quite an extent. Arise India with IIT Roorkee, KIO and Kyoto universities did some pioneering and research work and came up with Ecosystem-Centric Bcp for the revival of MSMEs as the recovery policy to improve the SOPs of polluting industries and streamline the unorganized sector. What is the ecosystem-centric BCP? This considers protecting the life, property, and the environment while emphasizing on continuation of the livelihood. This will provide organized ability to succeed in fulfilling the expectations of all interested partners by integrating the existing environmental and the safety norms in practice. It would also safeguard the air, soil, and the water from pollution, which weaken the capability of ecosystem functioning. There are, of course, many other ways of reviving the MSMEs too. Let us hear from our esteemed speakers on their views on the subject. I am sure they are going to be quite enriching. I can tell the participants they can be assured that they will have a number of takeaway from this webinar. Thank you and Jai Hind. Back to Shivani, please.
Thank you for your kind words of wisdom, sir. Now, I would like to introduce you all to our very enterprising and magnetic professor, Professor Rajat Agrawal. He is the moderator and panelist of today's event. Professor Rajat Agrawal is a professor at Department of Management Studies, IIT Roorkee, joint faculty at Department of Design, associate faculty at Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management and Center for Transportation Systems, IIT Roorkee, associate dean, Innovation and Incubation, PI and Coordinator IPR Chair, Co-PI and Co-Coordinator Design Innovation Center, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. I request Professor Rajat Agrawal to please share a few pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, Annie, for this introduction. I'm thankful to Professor Chakravarti for giving IIT Roorkee this opportunity to host the first webinar, pre-conference webinar in this 5th World Conference for Disaster Management. I am so much thankful to all our panelists. They agreed to be a panel member and to share their wisdom with us, so that a very important issue of revival of MSMEs, particularly in the context of what Brigadier Khanna just mentioned, like post-COVID scenario where MSMEs are worst hit, it's a very important and pertinent topic. And particularly in India, we handled this pandemic using our Disaster Mitigation Act of 2005. So it becomes a very relevant topic that how the revival of MSMEs and disaster management can be seen in one picture. This particular session is a kind of a panel discussion. We have 6 panel members, including myself, and we have a very systematic flow for this panel discussion. In the first round, we will be inviting all our esteemed speakers to give their initial thoughts on this very topic, because they are coming from different backgrounds. Some of them are researchers, some of them are policymakers, some of them are entrepreneurs, and some of them are leading the organizations. So they will come with different backgrounds. They will give us that food for thought. Once this round one is over, and we are expecting that our audience will have enough queries, enough points for discussion with these panel members. So in your window, there is a particular link for questions. You can go to that link. You can post your questions. It will be better that you post your question for a particular speaker, so that it is easy for us to ask your question to the respective speaker. During the question answer session, after this initial round, we will be answering your questions. And once that round is over, then I will again request my panel members for their final closing remarks. So in a way, you will have 2-3 opportunities to interact with our panel members. Initially, they will be giving their opening remarks, then you will have a question answer session, and then they will be giving their closing remarks also. So the session will become more interactive, more lively, more useful if you ask more and more pertinent questions with our speakers. Since I am in dual role in this particular activity, where I will also be setting the context, Brigadier Khanna already set the agenda for this particular session, that how pandemic affected the industry, the overall business trajectory, and in that MSMEs are the worst hit. And reports of ILO, etc. are available, where they have given some kind of a very devastating numbers. And if you go on that number, it looks like that whether it is possible to come back to the previous situation, pre-pandemic situation, how the whole efforts will be required. I'm sure that we can always debate on the numbers, but whether you believe on numbers or not, there are certain hard facts that we all have seen in India, at least during the second wave of COVID. So many disturbing videos, so many disturbing pictures, that and so many stories around you, that you can need to think that how we need to revive the whole Indian economy, which is centered around MSMEs. And at one point, we are thinking of revival of MSMEs. But at the second thought, it comes that MSMEs are a major source of pollution also. So now there is a bigger challenge that on one side, we need to revive the MSMEs also, so that they can contribute in the growth of economy. And on the second, we also need to see that this revival is in the interest of environment at large. So considering this particular point, let me share quickly a very small presentation with you. And with that presentation, I will be discussing that how MSMEs can be used for their revival. And with this role of MSMEs in our economy, particularly like India, where maximum employment is in the field of MSME, where maximum export is also happening because of MSME. And therefore, it is very important for us to just let me take a minute. So if you can see my PPT, so So here, if I see some important numbers that gives you the importance of MSME in India, about 6% plus contribution in the manufacturing GDP is coming from MSME. A very huge number, 120 million people are employed in our MSME sectors. MSMEs contribute around 40% of total exports from India, and around 63.4 million units are there, which include informal and informal sectors. But when you see on the other side, it's a very, very disturbing figure. Even when I was preparing for this particular introduction, I also got baffled with this number, that 70% of industrial pollution is coming from our MSME sector. This is really very challenging, and I think our panel members will help us in understanding the situation and how to solve this situation. Serious health hazards are possible, permanent damage to environment. Around 32 billion environmental cost is estimated in year 2010. That is coming because of environmental issue from the MSMEs in India. And as Brigadier Khanna also mentioned, the problem of water pollution, soil pollution exists in different industrial areas. Wherever you go in India and you find some MSME cluster, automatically you can realize water and soil pollution problems continuously. When you see this particular problem from a supply chain point of view, so what I have realized with my experience over a period of time, this is OEM, original equipment manufacturer. But as you move away from OEM, you go to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. So the size of those units starts reducing. And I will not like to name these areas in our country, but when you go to those areas where large number of tier 3 suppliers are there, the problem of industrial pollution is much severe, because there is no regulatory systems existing in that area, and they don't follow any kind of rules, regulations. You will find even child labor is also working in those areas. So as you go towards OEM, the problem looks very simple, and you will find state-of-the-art equipment, awareness, all those things. But as you move away, the problem becomes really very grave. So there is a challenge how to handle this particular situation as you move away from OEM. And for that purpose, now in India also, we have started talking of circular economy. Government of India is taking certain very pragmatic steps for introducing the concept of circular economy in Indian MSMEs, and it will help a competitive environmental strategy which will minimize the waste, will help in environmental conservation, improving the energy efficiency, and finally, with the help of all these things, you will achieve economic development. When we interacted with tier 2, tier 3 level of organizations, which are particularly micro and small, because when you talk of medium, the ball game is slightly different. But when you go to micro and small, situation is different. So though we have used these terms in a single letter, MSME, but the situation of micro and small is much different than the medium-sized organizations. So the issue is that whenever you talk to them about the environmental issues, green issues, they consider it like a additional cost. They are not able to appreciate that if we are going green, it is certainly going to help us in improving our economic development. So the concept of circular economy, the awareness around this particular area will certainly going to appreciate that if we follow the green concepts, it will not only help the society, but it will help them also by getting more profit if they are able to minimize the waste, if they are having more energy efficient systems, certainly the cost of production will be less and they will be having more profits. So these are some of the important inputs for the circular economy. I will like to share one very latest model which is available to highlight that how green recovery can be possible with circular economy. So if I see this circular economy model, which has a manufacturer, a user who generates waste, then you again collect the waste, and that waste or that used material is going as input to the manufacturer. And here you see the entire concept of circular economy, that whatever is the output, that again goes to organization as input, and again that value addition takes place, and that again comes into the form of output. So now you see in this particular diagram that if you are a manufacturer, let's take you are a small manufacturer or you are a micro manufacturer, then you can apply the concept of green recovery in the form of forward logistics, green marketing, better storage practices, green sales. When you are using a particular product as a consumer, you are having the complete use of the product till end of its life. Then how are you disposing that product? Once you have disposed that product, when it is a waste from your end, then the reverse logistic network is developed so that it is collected, and after the collection, it goes to the manufacturer so that the same manufacturer, the point here I will like to mention that the manufacturer who is originally manufacturing it and the manufacturer where this collected material is going may be two different manufacturers, and a new cycle may emerge in the second round, a third cycle may emerge in the third round, but there is a continuous movement in this particular circular economy. And we need to create more and more awareness, more and more enabling conditions so that our small and micro organizations can appreciate the importance of such type of novel concepts. And once they will appreciate, then only we will be able to solve the problems. Otherwise, if pandemic comes, again there will be a challenge that how are we going to help our migrant laborers? How are we going to help the small organizations? It's not the issue of labor alone, but for me, it is the issue of those who are involved in those entrepreneurial activities, because they don't have that much of capital to survive. And if the factory is not working for 1 year, even the entire business model is going to crumble. And the problem is at multiple level. When we are ready to adopt new principles, when we are ready to accept new things, at that particular time, we are going to change our thinking, and that particular thing will help the MSMEs to survive, to help MSMEs to contribute in a better way. And this issue that MSMEs are polluting industries, that will also go away. So we want that Indian MSMEs should be able to contribute in their pursuit of excellence, and their contribution to GDP should certainly increase. And not only the contribution to GDP, but the green indicators, whatever green indicators we discussed, those green indicators should also be important thing about the health of MSME with respect to environmental issues. So with these points, I will like to stop here, and I will like to invite my new panelists who will help us to understand the concept of green recovery of MSMEs in their different countries, in their different perspective, because we have very eminent speakers with us. And now I will like to invite a very renowned entrepreneur, because Bangladesh is a country which is known for women empowerment. I was talking to various experts in different forums, and I keep a very close track on the progress of Bangladesh. And many people suggested that the reason of progress of Bangladesh is women empowerment. The work Bangladesh has done at the grassroots level to empower the women, that is the key of success of Bangladesh. And I am very pleased to have with us Madam Selima Ahmad, who is an entrepreneur, a role model in itself, a business leader, who is also a member of parliament to the People's Republic of Bangladesh in December 2018. As the founder president of Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry and vice chairperson of Nitol Niloy Groups, she is the developing world's personification, working for the private sector development for the last 30 years. She founded this Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry in 2001 to empower businesswomen, and it is a very important figure, my dear friends. She has developed more than 51,497 women entrepreneurs. Her work has been recognized by many awards, including Oslo Business for Peace Award 2014, and many more for her accomplishments. So with these few words, I will like to invite Madam Selima Ahmad for her opening remarks on this very pertinent topic. Over to you, ma'am. Ahmad.
Thank you very much. Very, very kind words, Professor Rajat Agrawal. My light is not working correctly. Maybe the green energy wants to see that we should not use the electricity, but more renewable energy. I really appreciate that today UNDRR, Arise India, and Center for Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management, IIT Roorkee, who has organized this very important event. MSMEs are the backbone of any economy in the world. We all know about it. But we also now know that when especially the micro and the small entrepreneurs, they work for their livelihood. They have a dream, but with the dream there is a livelihood. So sometimes they do businesses where they don't know that they are hampering the environment. And during this COVID-19 situation, we have seen that, especially when the whole global economy is facing a great lockdown, recession has been caused in many countries. The shutdown actually affected from last March 2020, and the coronavirus spread has resulted also shutdown of almost all economic activities. And with the onset of the COVID-19 crisis, micro, small and medium enterprises are particularly in a very vulnerable position. And this is a big concern like any other countries in Bangladesh. Since these enterprises are strategically important for the economic recovery in the country after the pandemic is over. And like any other countries, micro, small and medium enterprise are the lifeline of the economy of Bangladesh. And according to 2019 World Bank report, 99% of the non-farm enterprises in Bangladesh are MSMEs. And in 2013, MSMEs created about 20 million jobs. So MSMEs in Bangladesh face a number of challenges. We all know that limited access to finance, limited availability of skilled and semi-skilled workers, technical literacies, lack of coordination among government agencies, and of course, corruption. During the COVID pandemic, MSMEs faced all these challenges with even higher difficulties. Since business activities are halted, either partially, many was closed down, or some also we have seen that they have changed their business, and cash flow was the main crisis, because we have seen that even our women entrepreneurs, they said that their shops are closed, but they have to give salaries or the wages to their workers. They have to pay rent for their showroom or the beauty parlor. So it was really a problem for them. So I divided it in 3 parts for today's event. That, you know, we all know about this crisis, but how we can introduce, which has been introduced long back, about this green economy, and where many entrepreneurs are now changing to like e-commerce, online businesses, because they're shifting to their other businesses, but because many businesses has been failed, many businesses need to be changed in a different area. So can green recovery be a priority concern for SMEs? The question which has been arised for this webinar, that when the traditional focus is on the revival of the economy. So I think both, we have to revive the economy, but also we have to see that MSMEs has to be in a line with the green businesses, whether small or big, because, or for a new entrepreneur, for an old MSMEs, because there are new opportunities. And also there are new ideas, because many traditional business which has been done has been shut down, and many things has to be done in a new way. They have to take bank loan, they have to take a different sort of new training. So here there is this opportunity to tap on with these entrepreneurs to involve them into green economy, which will definitely revive the economy also. So the third thing was that, you know, the third part which we are talking about, that innovations with the integrated policies. The best part for Bangladesh is that Central Bank of Bangladesh makes it mandatory for all banks and non-banking financial institutions that they must disburse 2% of sustainable financing to green financing. So 2% must be disbursed by any bank or non-financial non-banking financial institution. 2% must be given to the green business. So there are now 2 types of business. One is sustainable businesses, another is green businesses. So banks should give 15% of their loan for sustainable businesses and 2% for green businesses. So this is our central bank has done. And BD government has established 2 flagship green funds also, which is Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund and also the Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Fund. So government initiatives for green business development is that government of Bangladesh is concerned about green business development and formulates various acts, regulation and policy initiatives till 2010. Major green business development initiatives observed in the financial institutions due to the mandatory requirements by Bangladesh Bank. The government subsidies and taxes rebate also initiatives has been given to creative positive influence on total investment efficiency. So those who are taking initiatives, they will have some subsidies. So these also will motivate new entrepreneurs and the MSMEs. The government policy instruments can also attract the attention in society, and also the academia also need to be talk about it. Government green business initiatives promote the projects to provide funding in low carbon economy. So we all know that why green business is important. This is important to reduce the extraction of carbon emission and pollution in the country. And Bangladesh, we know, is one of the vulnerable countries in the world due to climate change related negative impacts. And also we have natural disasters like cyclone, excessive rain, floods, droughts, river erosion, lots of things. So now I think is an opportunity to tap on the MSMEs who has suffered for COVID-19 pandemic. So training, capacity building is very important for entrepreneurs, and to give them guidelines and also tap them and connect them with the bank, because bank is now mandatory to give 2% green banking finance, because if they don't, their camel rating, you know, the Bangladesh bank does a camel rating for all banks, so their camel rating will be lower. So all the banks also are interested to give green financing. Now we have to help the entrepreneurs to make projects. We have to help the entrepreneurs to understand what is green economy. We have to understand, we have to help the entrepreneurs to make business plan. And for that, capacity building is important, because even with the small entrepreneurs, of the micro entrepreneurs, with the women entrepreneurs, I remember when we were getting bank loan for women entrepreneurs, they couldn't get access because they didn't have a business plan. They didn't have a bank accounts history. So here we need to work in a complete way. It has to be a wholesome way where we can revive MSMEs, and also we build the capacity of MSMEs in green economy, and Bangladesh is ready to support. And you know, our Prime Minister, Honorable Sheikh Hasina, she is always helping entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs, and also very much interested to see that green economy flourish in our country. Thank you very much for allowing me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for being in time and giving the details about the various initiatives of Government of Bangladesh to promote green businesses and green economy. And at this point, I would like to introduce our second panelist, who is the former head of UNDRR's sub-regional office for the Pacific in Fiji for 5 years, Mr. Timothy Wilcox. He is now based in Bangkok and manager of UNDRR activities in Southeast Asia, and he leads UNDRR's private sector resilience in Asia and Sendai framework for monitoring in Asia Pacific. Mr. Wilcox served in the Australian Public Service for 13 years and was posted to the Australian High Commission in Fiji as manager of the disaster risk management team. He served for 7 years in the emergency services in Australia. He's a member of the International Association of Emergency Managers, and today he is going to present on mitigating the effect of health emergencies on MSMEs in Asia Pacific regions. So I am glad to invite Mr. Wilcox on the stage for his remarks on this particular topic.
Thanks very much, Dr. Agrawal, and thank you very much, distinguished panelists and guests. It's a privilege to be here today, and we thank you very much for allowing us to join this pre-conference webinar. I think this initiative is fantastic, and you know, it's great to hear all the messages so far from the esteemed panelists and guest speakers. Allow me just to okay, thanks very much. Yep, so that's just the first slide. Thanks. Yep, we'll just move on to the next one. Thanks very much. So I won't speak for too long. I'll keep within time. But I just wanted to start off by this. I always like to start off with a general comment about why private sector resilience is so important. I mean, we all know why, but it's good not to assume that everyone comes from the same position. But as we know, even from, you know, if we take COVID-19 out of the picture for a moment, we know that, you know, MSMEs are disproportionately affected by disasters, you know, which are having a huge extensive economic implication for urban growth. And, you know, now with COVID-19, we're actually seeing, you know, many businesses having to deal with compound disasters and actually trying to deal with COVID-19 shutdowns, as well as some other hazard at the same time, like a cyclone or a flood or a landslide or an earthquake or something like that. And that just makes things even worse than what things were. And in order for us to achieve our sustained growth, you know, we have to have a resilient private sector. And the only way to do that is to ensure that we have a whole of society approach to things in country. sometimes when people talk about whole society, they often don't realize that the private sector makes up a big part of that. And that's where people's livelihoods are, that's where their jobs are, that's where their employment is. And without that, the society is not going to be sustainable or resilient. So we must ensure that we adopt this whole society approach and involve the private sector. I mean, a good example of this lack of sustainable growth is in Cyclone Winston in the Fiji Islands back in 2016. It was Category 5 cyclone. It did the equivalent of 20% of the GDP of Fiji in that one cyclone. Now, if they're only growing at a roughly 2% a year, it basically means they're actually going backwards in many ways. It's going to take them several years to get all that economic growth back. But one thing that most people didn't realize was that 84% of the damage was actually done to the private ownership. When most people think about cyclones and disasters, they think, the government buildings are damaged or destroyed, maybe bridges, schools, hospitals. But the fact is, most of that's actually done to the private sector, whether it's a private home or it's a private school or a private hospital or businesses and small businesses and large businesses or private infrastructure. So it's essential that we involve the private sector in this concept of resilience. Next slide. So looking more closely here at home to South Asia, I mean, the World Bank did a study recently that showed that COVID-19 has impacted the private sector substantially across the region, but it hasn't affected everybody quite the same. It showed that small firms, in particular those that were led by women, have generally suffered more in terms of business closures. So in South Asia, the probability of remaining open, if you're a micro or a small firm, is about 70%, compared to about 80% for medium and large firms. Also, it showed that female-led firms had a probability of only being open for maybe 50%. So as compared to businesses that were owned and led by men, who were a 61% chance of staying open. And the probability of remaining open was even lower for the accommodation services, such as hotels, which is about 18%, food preparation, which is 50%. But the ICT and the financial services were over 75%. So again, it shows this relationship of requiring an interaction with a customer face-to-face as opposed to being able to shift online. And it also showed that micro and small firms and those in the manufacturing and accommodation subsector suffered the largest decline in sales. So how COVID-19 has impacted the different sectors, is different. Just a quick case study from the Philippines. They did a survey, UNIDO did a survey last year on the impact of COVID-19 to medium and small enterprises. And it showed that a third of the respondent firms did not have any business continuity plans whatsoever. And in fact, 75% of those non-operational firms, which were permitted to operate, did not have a BCP either. So, and when it actually looked at those that had a business continuity plan, it was shown that firms that even if they had a business continuity plan, showed that 50% of them found that the BCP that they had was inadequate and lacking completely. And part of the reason for that was because that they had a tendency to focus on traditional hazards that they were used to encountering each year, whether it was a typhoon, or a flood, or a fire, or earthquake of some sort there in the Philippines. But only 50% of them found that the BCPs worked, and the other 50% found that they were completely lacking. Well, 35% found that didn't respond too well to the emergency at all. So clearly showing that some work needs to be done with the BCPs. And firms without a BCP, 35% of them did not even know what a BCP was. And 25% of them said that they were a micro or a small business. And this is not surprising, because once you start going down to the lower levels, the micro and small businesses, really they're geared towards just doing what they do. Someone who has a small coffee shop, they want to sell coffee. That's what they do, right? That's what they specialize in. They work from home in a micro business. They want to sell, textiles or clothing. That's what they do. So they're not focused on, or they're not aware of, what is a business continuity plan? How do I build resilience, or why is that important, or even understanding what their risk is? So it's really kind of very revealing, this survey. And I think that this is probably a similar picture around the region. Next slide. I found this picture the other day and I thought it was really quite telling in terms of what's happening with us and how green recovery can actually address multiple hazards at the same time. It's basically a picture there of people focusing on a COVID-19 wave, saying make sure you wash your hands and everything's going to be okay. But then coming behind that is like all these other cascading problems and risks, right? So you've got the recession coming from the COVID-19 downturn, economic downturn, but behind that you've got the climate change wave, and behind that you've got biodiversity collapse. So it's like we have a tendency to focus on what's in front of us at the time, but with climate change and biodiversity collapse, you know, it's coming. It may not be here today, but it's coming. So if we have a green recovery, then we're actually working towards the climate change wave, which is coming down the track in a few years' time. So, and the biodiversity collapse. So we're actually, you know, addressing multiple hazards and disasters at the same time. So what are we doing? Well, we have the Arise networks, which is UNDRR started with its partners many years ago, back in 2015, after the World Conference for DRR. And it was designed specifically to support the private sector to become a key partner in reducing disaster risk in country and the regions. It's grown to over about 350 members globally, and there's about 20 Arise country networks across the world. Here in the region, I'm happy to say that we have one in Arise India, and hats off to Brigadier Khanna, who was the CEO of that, as well as Arise Philippines and Arise Japan. And essentially what it tries to do is affect change in how the private sector invests in risk-informed sustainable future. It tries to bring private sector together in the country, and it tries to lead, you know, and the engagement of the private sector with the countries as well, and actually gives an opportunity for the government to find a way of how to engage with private sector in a meaningful way. So we like to see it as a network in country by private sector, for private sector, and the work plans that they develop, particularly the Arise India ones and the Arise Philippines and Arise Japan, are actually very noteworthy globally in terms of leading the way on how private sector can actually help the government, as well as mobilizing itself to help and build sustainable and build the resilience of the communities. Next slide. So some of the tools that we've done over the past year in response to COVID-19 and trying to build, trying to support micro and small businesses here in the region. One of the key ones we came up with in partnership with ADPC and RICA is what's called this quick risk estimate tool, right, for MSMEs to address COVID-19. And essentially what this does is it tries to get businesses to do a quick survey online by asking a series of questions on COVID-19 and their business continuity planning and management and how they operate. And then it comes up with a series of assessments to tell you what your overall risk is to COVID-19 and some of the areas that you need to address. And this actually now will be available shortly in Hindi. We're trying to translate it into as many local languages as we can, because as I said before, once we get down to that local level, to the informal and the micro level, you know, the knowledge of the businesses, but more importantly, the ability to understand English is even lower. And it's really important because a lot of UN agencies have a tendency to come up with these tools, but they're only in English, right? And when in South Asia and Southeast Asia, when you start going down to the informal micro level, it has to be in the local language. Otherwise, you know, the ability for the informal, the micro businesses to understand English is even lower. Next slide. So once they do the Qre survey, it comes up with a result like this, which basically shows like an overall risk scores, like very low, low, medium, high, very high. And then it tries to also identify the areas, whether it's a finance area or the HR area or the operations area of your business or the technology innovation, where your risks are that you need to pay more attention to. You know, so say, for example, in this picture, you know, it's showing that the operations area is an area that needs to be addressed. So it tries to give you some guidance in terms of where your risks are. Next slide. It then tries to give you some information about what you can do. So it's saying, okay, you're a medium risk. Some of the areas you need to focus on are technology, innovation, and exposure to other hazards, because maybe people are only focusing on the traditional hazards, like I was saying, and not health emergencies. And then tries to give you some guidance on how to address that. Next slide. So another tool we came up with our partners, such as ADPC, ILO, UNIDO, UNDP, and IFRC, was this COVID-19 business continuity and recovery planning toolkit for micro and small businesses, trying to give some real practical information and ideas on how micro and small businesses can actually address COVID-19 and build their resilience and start recovery from that. This is the website for it here. And we translated it into 11 languages, which has been very useful. And it basically tries to be as practical as possible for businesses. So it's like a raising awareness, a guide helping you to a how-to tool, which actually tries to give you some guidance in trying to identify strategies on how to actually start recovery and building your resilience. So we found that these tools have actually been quite useful. And the website that this was, that's here, shows that it's been accessed more than 20,000 times. So obviously there's quite a lot of attention being given to it, which we think is great. Next slide. But these practical tools we find are very useful. And in partnership with ADPC, we also came with this e-learning course. So we recognize we can't do workshops anymore. So we try to give like some practical e-learning courses, like videos and orientation for people on how to actually use the toolkit, which is really good. Next slide. So just wrapping up, just some opportunities based on our experiences and talking to partners and what we know so far. I think, really, once you start talking about micro and small businesses, we really need to help them understand what their risks are and actually help them with practical tools on how to build their resilience to all hazards, not just the traditional ones that they're used to. Because they often say, with disasters, it's the hazards you're not paying attention to that get you in the end. It's like a shark. Tell any diver, it's not the shark that's in front of you, it's the shark that comes up behind you that gets you. And disasters are the same way. Everyone's focused on one particular hazard, but it's the one that's coming up that's going to get you. So green recovery, I think, is an excellent opportunity. And we need to help them provide knowledge and tools to help inform them on what green recovery is to recover from COVID-19 so they can address these other hazards that are coming behind the wave of COVID-19. We need to take advantage of networks like Arise India, ADPC's iPrepare network, and Connecting Business Initiative, and others. There's many more, as a way of mobilizing the private sector.
Wilcox, can we discuss some of these points in our round 2? Because we have others also.
Yep, this is it, last slide. I just have one point, which is basically we need to incentivize the private sector to build resilience and invest in green recovery. That's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Wilcox, for your very interesting presentation, because you touched that what is the role of private sector, the concept of whole of society, and then various tools which are developed by Arise and particularly for the help of MSMEs. So I have a couple of questions which will be discussed during our Q&A session. And now we have a very seasoned academician with us, Professor Goutam Sen Gupta, and he is a true example that how industry and academia can come together. And he's a renowned personality, presently serving as Vice Chancellor of a university. And before that, he already had numerous key responsibilities in corporates as General Manager in Philips, President of Weibel Consumer Electronics, Vice President of Videocon Group, and many other board positions in corporate sector. He had earned lifetime certification from Institute of Supply Management. He is currently in the board of advisors of Federation of Small and Medium Industries, in the expert committee of National Board of Accreditation, the chairman of Quality Circle Forum of India, Kolkata chapter, joint chairman of the Central Center for Research in Materials Management. Dr. Sen Gupta is currently serving as the Vice Chancellor of Techno India University, West Bengal, and he is also holding the adjunct professor positions at IIT Kharagpur. Professor Sen Gupta is going to discuss about enhancing the competitiveness of MSMEs during the pandemic. I request Dr. Sen Gupta to grace the stage. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, WCDM, to have brought me here, and thank you, Professor Rajat Agrawal, for the kind introduction. Now, what I will deliberate is basically more influenced by my experience of handling MSME units. I was in industry for many years, and one of my portfolio in Philips, where I led for many, many years in India and abroad, as well as in Tata Motors, was basically developing the ancillaries and developing the small industries. Is the screen went off? Should I share the screen, or I'm not able to see the screen? Yeah, I can help it. Okay, just a minute. No, I think, yeah. Okay. So it will be more, more from the focus of what MSME thinks of themselves and what are the real issues. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide? If it is not moving, I can do myself. Should I do myself?
Yes, sir, you can try from your side.
Okay, sure. No, I think. Yeah, previous one. Or you can come out of it. I will handle myself. Okay. I will do the screen share. That is better to do. No, I think still there. Well, I'm not able to do. I think you are doing it from your end. Okay. Yeah. Can you share the slide?
Annie, share the slide, please.
Speak about MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprise. is undoubtedly is the backbone of our economy and plays a significant role in economic development. It is acknowledged worldwide that MSMEs are important contributions to a nation's economy and social development. As Professor Rajat Agrawal said, that its sector contributes 45% of the total manufacturing output, 40% of the total export, 6% of the manufacturing GDP, and 24% of the GDP from the service activities, employs over 8 crore people, and produces over 8,000 products. Can we move on? Yeah, so this is the kind of significance of the MSME. I'm talking of Indian context. Network of 51 million enterprise, provides employment to 107.1 million persons, estimated contribution of almost 30% of GDP, with manufacturing and service segment 6% and 20% respectively, 45% of industrial production and 40% of export. Can we move on? Yeah. Now there is a dismal picture. What we find is that the MSME, I'm talking from Indian MSME context, are very poor in competitiveness. There are several studies were done, and the recent survey of MSMEs reveals that only 19% of Indian MSMEs have capacity utilization of more than 90%. In other words, 19% of the MSMEs are competitive. And Government of India had bought several schemes to enhance the competitiveness of the Indian MSMEs. Some work has happened, but there are a lot of work is still to be done. There was a study done by Michael Porter Institute, and it also spoke similar thing, that the Indian MSMEs are very poor in the competitiveness. Actually, that is the core issue. I'm trying to bring the core issue. The core issue is the non-competitiveness of the Indian MSMEs, and they do not understand. It is our failure of not having been able to educate them that what brings the competitiveness. Can we move on? Yeah, then came the COVID-19, and our previous speakers already spoke. I will not take much time on this. It has hit the MSME sectors most. And MSMEs, many of the MSMEs were forced to close their doors, and many MSMEs were confronted with the skills getting lost. Key skills were getting lost because of the impact of COVID-19. So it has something which has hit the MSME sector much more. Next. Let's move on. Yeah. Problem is that when we speak about the green recovery, issue is these are all connected. The MSME, the way MSME understands the business, they understand the business of more what money they are making out of their return. But they do not understand, many of them do not understand that how to make that money. And that money arises out of value and waste, very traditional concept of value and waste. Are we adding value or are we adding waste? It starts right from their procurement. It starts in their manufacturing process. It goes into the trajectory of distribution and consumption, and it is related to the environment and the waste, because these are all related. It's wrong to say that green is something, a new subject we are telling them, because the green starts right from their supply chain. So we have worked with the MSMEs, and we have told them, some of them have really improved, and we said the way the MSME can enhance their competitiveness is TQM, lean, and green. These are all connected. You go for TQM, you change the culture of the organizations, you go for lean, and you go for green. One is in a micro level, another is a macro level. These are all connected. No TQM is successful until you are lean, and no lean is successful if you are not green. So these are all connected. And that's what they have to understand. And in a MSME sector, our research shows almost 30% of the turnover is a waste in some form or other. And a lot of responsibility, I should say, is also on the OEMs. When Professor Rajat showed that Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, that OEMs have to take responsibility of educating the MSMEs. I congratulate Bangladesh. There is an eminent speaker from Bangladesh. I have been visiting that country. I supported Philips to start their company and become productive in Bangladesh a decade back. When I have gone to that country a decade back, and now I see a lot of change. So certainly, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, they're doing a good progress. And the main issue is, can we bring back the competitiveness by understanding the difference between the value and the waste? Can we move on? So there are a lot of initiatives. Government of India bought a scheme called Lean Management Competitive Scheme, LMCS, and it reported annual savings of approximately 60 crores. The other achievements were annual saving from lean implementation 60 crores, increase in production capacity 10%, space reclaimed for production over 10%, increase in inventory turnover 25%, reduction in manufacturing lead time 5 to 30%, improvement in overall equipment effectiveness 15%, a number of Kaizen generated. Kaizen is one of the lean tool, more than 7,500. So that is a kind of improvement which has happened, but that is much more has to be done. Many of the LMCS schemes have not been successful because of the adequate support which we could not give it to the small industries. Let's move on. So concept of lean and green, I said, according to us, according to the MSME sector with whom I work very closely, I have developed more than maybe 2,000 MSME in India. Now, according to me, this is all connected. TQM, lean, green, these are all connected. We need to educate. We need to tell our MSME sector that there lies the money. You do that and you will get back what we call in management, we call it cost of poor quality. You understand what is the cost of poor quality. Green is a part of cost of poor quality. So once you can understand, measure your cost of poor quality and take actions to cut down the cost of poor quality, which is almost 30 to 40% of your turnover in manufacturing organization, then that brings profit to you. This is the education which they need to have. Once they have their business people, they are very smart guys, so they know what is to be done. It's wrong to say they are polluting. Yes, they are, but probably they don't understand how these are connected with the bottom line of their companies. Yeah, let's move on. Yeah, this is, we have seen in our research, we conducted a research on MSME during the, my research scholars from my university, we engaged them. They did a research during the time of COVID, right on the time of COVID, when the COVID was at the peak during March, April 2020. We did it for 6 months and we found that there is a huge anxiety which has come to the mind of not only on the workers, not only on the migrant workers, but also on the management. They never knew what is to be done. And they approached us saying that what kind of management style we should adopt during this time. So we told them the only management style which works now is in Agile. We speak about servant leadership. So you need to take the workers in confidence and accommodate them because they are under a fear of losing their jobs, losing their lives. So it was a very peculiar situation which happened because of the COVID. That's what our research revealed. Let's move on. Yeah, we applied this on some MSME. I won't say medium enterprise. I would say small enterprise, micro and small, and in all India basis, we educated them, and the very simple tools we used. The 5S is one of the tools, very simple. It is one of the lean tool, and you see the situation before and after. They started making money. Their bottom line became good, and they realized the importance of green, and they implemented green to the fullest extent. Next. Another example. You see, these changes do not cost much. It only requires a mindset, change of mindset, and our educating them, our holding their hands. Next. Is another example. Go to the next. Yeah, this is another. This is somewhere in Kolkata suburb. Next. Yeah, these are before green, lean, and TQM. All are connected. You enhance your competitiveness, your bottom line improves, you understand, you spend money, you understand that more you are green, you have a benefit out of it. Until they understand that, they will not embrace those. No amount of legislation can carve this nuisance until they are educated and they understand the value of TQM, lean, and green. And I always connect all these three because these are all connected. You know, if we produce a product in the plant and if there is we call it FOR, fall-off rate. If the FOR is 2%, in the field it will be 10% because 2% of your products are bad. So it is leaking out and it is polluting the environment. So it starts from where you start your procurement, right from there, manufacturing, your distribution, your sales, and then it goes to the market. And the circular economy is extremely important. Reverse logistics, extremely important. We need to educate people on that. And I must congratulate this Arise India and WCDM for have organized this wonderful seminar. Let's go next. Yeah, thank you very much. So I wanted to bring a perspective from the point of view of the MSME people who are very neglected, I must say. We have discussed enough for them, but actually we could not lift the standards of MSME to the extent it should have gone up. Some work we have certainly done, but not much. The key issue is education. Key issue is holding their hands. Key issue is motivating them that these concepts will bring back money into your system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your practical examples that how simple tools, proper education can help MSMEs to go for recovery path, particularly green recovery, which we are talking. And there are a couple of questions which we will be discussing in the second round of our session. Now, I take this opportunity to invite our next panel member, Mr. Aslam Perwaiz. And Mr. Perwaiz is the Deputy Executive Director of Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, ADPC. He has substantive field experience from more than 15 countries, and he has worked in Asia, Pacific, Africa, with national and subnational work program development and implementation in emergency preparedness planning, post-disaster damage and loss assessment, recovery planning, private sector resilience, training and capacity building framework, and curriculum development, resource mobilization, and DRM institutional development. So the complete profile of a disaster management personality is, you can see in the form of Mr. Aslam Perwaiz. Mr. Perwaiz is going to talk on the competitiveness and resilience towards quality growth. And now I request and invite Mr. Perwaiz on the center stage.
Yeah, Dhanyawad Agrawal Sahab. Just to relate to you, most of my learnings on what I am today has been in and around Roorkee. And of course, at that time when Professor Arya used to be in there, and most of us used to learn what disaster management is. So I have a
Professor Arya passed away last year only.
Yes.
So he was very close to us.
Yes, I am fully aware of that. And for sure, most of you must be waiting to hear Mr. Mitra, who is the last speaker. And now I'm the second last speaker, and I think allow me perhaps what I'm going to speak looks like the summarization of what the other 4 speakers have spoken before. As Mr. Agrawal introduced me, I am a disaster management professional. So most of the thing that I would talk is from the perspective of disaster crisis and emergency management. Let me also thank both IIT Roorkee and Arise India for inviting Asian Disaster Preparedness Center for this important discussion. But more importantly, today I'm very thankful for the participant who has joined us online. Ideally, in a non-COVID situation, we would have been sitting face to face, seeing each other and interacting, but this technology has allowed us to come together, but unfortunately, there are limitations and I cannot see you properly, and that's my loss. My colleague from UNDRR spoken a number of times about ADPC, and this is exactly what we do. We do participate and partner with a number of agencies, and we have a wholehearted support to Arise India. What I'm going to share with you and my experience on SME or MSME is from the work that I did since 2011 by working in a number of EPEC economy. You know that Asia Pacific Economic Community is one of the very strong regional platform here. If you remember 2011, there were 2 mega events that took place. One was the Thai flood, and the second was this Great Eastern Japan earthquake and tsunami that actually brought forward the importance of private sector losses, particularly of SMEs and micro, small, and medium enterprise, which for today's discussion, we term it as MSMEs. Thailand, which suffered severe flooding in 2011 and continued to face a range of risks from natural disaster and climate change. The post-2011 flood environment acted as a turning point for attitudes and actions in terms of business continuity management, and that large corporations and local businesses are now becoming more resilient and attractive to future business investment. Thanks to the work of UNDRR and many others, and also the government in Thailand, taking this opportunity to learn and providing as much as platform for the medium and small and medium enterprises for flourishing under new growth opportunities. You already heard, but I think it is important to mention here that MSMEs are always referred as backbone of economy, sometimes the driver of economy. But at the same time, when you look at, and I think my last speaker also mentioned, they are the least prepared for business disruption caused by disasters. However, much attention has been given since 2011 on strengthening MSMEs and improve the business resilience through legal, institutional, and fiscal provisions. And some of them we have already heard from here. There's no need to report. More importantly, early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way we used to interact and now plunging the global economy into a deep recession. It is already there. MSMEs, which play a major role in emerging economies, are amongst the hardest hit. Repeated lockdowns and the exodus of migrant workers that followed the lockdowns exacerbated societal and economic challenges across the countries. For the first time, and I think after a long time, the nations are responding to a truly global crisis with inter-economy, inter-boundary implications. India has the largest number of SMEs in the world after China. And I think you got the number right. In 2017, the share of MSMEs in India's GDP was almost 30%. The ongoing pandemic initially hit hard the Indian economy, and which is now slowly opening up. Has a key concern for SME though, is that they may not be able to operate at full capacities in the years to come. A majority of SMEs remain informal, operating without access to many government-supported COVID-19 benefits. Most are led by working poor, women, youth, and other marginalized and vulnerable groups at risk of falling into poverty and falling further behind, making it imperative that MSMEs are included in the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. It is important for us to remember that when we want MSMEs to take steps, we should also remember who they are and how they are across the board. The current crisis will further push back the limited gains, particularly made on gender equality, and exacerbate the feminization of poverty, vulnerability to violence, and women's equal participation in labor force. And I think we heard from honorable member from Parliament of Bangladesh. While large companies are in a better position to drive clean energy and energy efficiency measures, which we heard, the puzzle that has been missing a crucial piece, workable avenues for clean energy and energy efficiency measures across MSMEs. These MSMEs play a key role in ensuring green recovery from current pandemic, and we need strategies that will help them convert environmental challenges into business opportunities. We must find a way to unlock MSMEs' potential to achieve the sustainable development goals and transition to low carbon economy. MSMEs face several barriers, from an small individual size to single ownership of all the process and administrative structures. They are not able to attract green growth developers, energy efficient technology providers, or financing institutions to get product designed for the need. So I have 5 suggestions here for a faster, stronger, and inclusive recovery of the SMEs. The first and foremost, mobilize entrepreneurial ecosystem and strengthen business skills. UNDRR, Arise India, provides an excellent platform for a number of tools and training together with ADPC, and that perhaps would help them. Simplify business registration and facilitate formalization. You have seen during COVID-19, 95% of the MSMEs could not get the benefit from government-sponsored schemes only because they are not really registered. We are talking about people on the streets selling fruits, selling vegetables and all. The third is improve access to finance and financial literacy. It is important, and Vice Chancellor has already outlined that. In the era of COVID-19, I think it is important to increase access to technology and innovation. We have seen that technology changed the way we interact. Even today, we are connected from a different place. And then finally, enhance access to market. That is important. We have to create a market for the MSMEs if you really want to be recovering through green economy. Last couple of points. To be competitive and to support the sustainable development goal, it is important that industries and corporates, clean energy technology providers, and financial institutes support MSMEs at their own in sharing of cost and best practices. At ADPC, we have a I Prepare business facility to build disaster resilient businesses in the region. By partnering with large corporations and working with SMEs to strengthen the disaster and climate resilience and providing technical assistance on a demand-driven basis. iPrepare facility has been supporting the efforts of governments in creating a good environment that promotes risk-sensitive and informed investment by private sector. We do work with government, businesses, civil society, and international organizations to make the most of these opportunities and address the challenges of MSME resilience through partnership. At the end, it is my firm belief that Arise India, the IIT Roorkee, through the WCDM platform, can create the required enabling environment, including the policy framework, incentive structures that have been spoken, and access to information and capacity development, particularly in addressing the specific needs of the SME. Thank you very much, and I look forward for the discussion later.
Thank you, Aslam Sahab, for giving very focused solution to the problem in your 5-point agenda. And certainly we will like to know more about these points. And now I invite another solution provider, Mr. Mitra. Actually, these technocrats are considered to be solution provider, and he is handling that profile right now as Chief Continuity Officer of HCL Technologies. His charter is to design and deploy a future-ready crisis and resilience framework in line with industry-leading practices to appropriately respond to the evolving risk landscape while collaborating actively with HCL's clients across Fortune 1000 companies, diverse external stakeholders, and industry bodies. Mr. Mitra's mission is to build a more resilient world. He is the founding chair of the India Future Practice Group, a think tank of Business Continuity Institute dedicated to horizon scanning and decoding the future of business community, and a member of RAMS Regional Advisory Group of South Asia. Mr. Mitra is currently pursuing his doctoral program on resilience from Graduate School of Media and Governance at Keio University, Tokyo. So on one side, he is providing solution. On other side, he is learning also by getting enrolled in the PhD program. I consider it my great honor to welcome Mr. Mitra on the stage, and I request Mr. Mitra to give his opening remark.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Professor Rajat. If you allow me, can I just present my slides? I have a few.
Yeah, you can. You please go ahead.
Sure. So to begin with, a big warm thank you to WCDM as well as Arise India for having me here. I must tell you that I am a bit of an outlier in this panel because my experience and perspective, I would use the word limited, is limited to my work experience with large organizations. And over the last 1.5 hours, I have actually gotten enriched by listening to all the speakers. I particularly liked what Mr. Perwaiz and Dr. Goutam Gupta presented, including Timothy Wilcox. I do feel that they have already covered most of the points which will be valuable for the audience. I'm here today to share what I think is a wireframe or a high-level perspective from my vantage position. Having said that, it will be only fair to say that I'll be probably summarizing some of the thoughts which have been tabled by my very, very capable peers on this call. Just to give you a bit of my work background as part of HCL, I lead crisis and resilience. We're a $10 billion firm, and we have operations in 51 countries, and we have about 2 lakh employees. And COVID has been a big point of inflection for the whole industry, including HCL. If the audience is interested during this conference or later, I'll be happy to share some of the things which worked for us or some of the things which we could have done differently. So that's an offer which I'd like to put on the table. I do hope that some of those design principles will help our MSME sector as well. So fingers crossed. Let me just jump into my slides. Again, we've heard our peers talk about this. We really can't say enough about the importance of MSMEs, and I'm trying to keep my conversation at a 50,000 feet level. I'm not by design restricting my slides to India alone. This is a slide which I actually used in one of the UNDRR conferences I attended in Bangkok in December of 2019 to establish how important MSMEs are. 90% of the firms across the world, up to 60% of the GDP contribution, and 80% of the employment globally is coming from the MSMEs. And there's no doubt that they are drivers for innovation, social stability, job growth, and of course, the global value chain. Like Dr. Gupta brought about, that while we are still in the middle of COVID, but actually the reality is coinciding crises. So, it is not just COVID, but COVID plus, which has hit all of us, everybody. But the people who have been hit the most are the MSMEs, and the overall global value chains haven't gotten impacted. Like Dr. Gupta brought about, reduction in market demand, profit margins shrinking, disruptions to normal production and business services. So what are some of the opportunities and challenges in front of us? 75% of the SMEs are experiencing or expecting a reduction in revenues through 2020, as per ILO. MSMEs create 7 to 10 out of the 10 jobs. Obviously, that's at risk. The SMEs are also they impact the environment, right? We just heard our speakers talk about it. And like the chairman of WCDM pointed out right at the beginning, technology is such an important vector. And many of our MSMEs are actually struggling to embrace the benefits of technology. So on one end, there is a risk of green recovery not happening. On the other side, we have the challenge of technology not being embraced. And to my mind, there lies an opportunity, a white space or an intersection wherein green recovery, to begin with, resilience by design and then followed by green recovery as a subset can actually provide a path forward. From where I look at our operations at HCL, we have actually built a business continuity framework over the last 4 to 5 years, which really helped us in coping and responding to COVID-19, I would say with complete modesty, in a reasonably successful manner across the world. Having said that, we are now at a stage where we want to redefine business continuity and we want to move away from a disruption-oriented approach to a more peacetime approach, wherein you're looking at both not only risks but opportunities to actually invest in what we call as organizational resilience, which is more 360-degree in nature, which goes beyond traditional business continuity management and embeds the resilience thinking in our overall thought process. Now, this slide actually talks about something which I got inspired from World Economic Forum. This is actually about 5 ways MSMEs can build resilience in a post-COVID world. I'm actually drawing the concept of organizational resilience out here. Even I believe that it's very different for MSMEs, like Mr. Perwaiz brought about, that we should first know who they are, what is their reality, and then kind of try to bring about a thought process. And I completely accept that perspective. But at the core, I think all businesses at some point in time need to think about resilience across various dimensions. It may be difficult to begin with, but like someone said, most of them are sole proprietors. So what about leadership resilience? What about succession planning? What about revenue resilience? What about cash flow collections, credit arrangements, which is financial resilience? And obviously, operational resilience goes without saying. So under this broad framework, and I think Tim also referenced to some toolkits which are available now built by UNDRR to help organizations, small organizations, think about continuity and resilience in a future-focused manner. I think that's probably the first step. COVID definitely has done one thing, which I would call it a positive, that it's a wake-up call for most organizations who didn't take resilience as seriously or as holistically. And to my mind, that green recovery is actually, according to me, can be a subset of the overall resilience thinking. So to my mind, it is something which needs to be built in as part of the overall continuity and resilience thinking of all organizations, big and small. It needs to think, and my peers talked about it, research, finance, policy, and capacity building are 3 or 4 things which we need to look at, and obviously at all levels, local, national, geographical, and global. Again, this is what I'm showing you is not my creation, but I'm just trying to show, to my mind, there is no silver bullet. Every MSME is so unique that be it at an industry level or geography level, that we really need to look at things from their specific context. And I'm not sure if this high-level framework will do justice to that, but the idea is to say that we need to think at multiple orbits. If you look at what I'm trying to explain is that right from, the focus ranges from specific MSME interventions versus large policy narratives. So if as enabling organizations or enabling agencies, if we can think across the broad spectrum, my hope is that with partners like ARISE, UNDRR, and WCDM, we should be able to make a difference. I guess that's pretty much what I had, but I do want to acknowledge something which I think Brigadier Khanna brought about at the beginning is the work which has happened on ecocentric BCP. I was very impressed with that work. I think that came out last October, and thanks to Professor Mawa, Professor Shaw, I think Ms. Perwaiz, I think you were also involved on it. I don't know if Mr. Dillon is on this call himself, and Brigadier Khanna yourself. I think those are the kind of frameworks which will actually work, though I completely acknowledge that the cluster-based approach, like Dr. Gupta said, is yet to hit maturity. But to my mind, that's a good example or a good start point, which, the lens through which we can begin to look at this problem. With that, I think I will like to hand it back to Professor Rajat Agrawal. And thank you once again to all of you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Mitraji. Sometimes it is good to have outliers because they bring entirely different perspective to the table, and then you get a new idea to the problem, and the value you brought to the session is really all the audience and the fellow panelists can really appreciate that. Now we are quickly moving to our Q&A session, and I have some questions already lined up with me, and I will first taking this question to Madam Selima ji, and this question is regarding that recovery of MSMEs require huge amount of investment, and there may be a constraint with governments also to provide those investments. So in this scenario, what type of PPP initiatives been taken in Bangladesh for revival of MSMEs? is there any PPP initiatives also in Bangladesh?
Thank you very much. A very good answer. Actually, the Bangladesh government is encouraging PPP initiatives, and also mainly in the green business. So anyone who has a good project can submit it, and there is a team now for these PPP initiatives. And if the government thinks that these are okay, then they can move forward. Personally, I am also looking forward for a renewable energy project, like using water. There are lots of ponds in the villages, so how we can use the water and for further use of the people. So the small thing, and like also in our villages, solar lights are given, in even the lamp post, all are solar. So this is an opportunity where investors and the entrepreneurs can come. For the Bangladesh, there are lots of opportunities, but the thing is the capacity building of the entrepreneurs are so low that even if there are opportunities, because of not having a right proposal, they are not getting these benefits. So we need to advocate for building capacity for the MSMEs.
Yeah, capacity building is a very important thing. I must agree, and there cannot be any dispute about the capacity building. And whatever we are doing, that is still less. More is required to build capacity of MSMEs. At this point, I have another question, and this is pointed to Dr. Goutam Sen Gupta, that now under the new definition of MSME, most of the industries in India, maybe around, you can say, up to 90% industries come under the category of MSME. So what additional measures, because now you have a bigger chunk of companies under the MSME umbrella. So what additional measures you feel should be there for sustainable development of MSME sector? Ma'am, just before you answer this question, Madam Selima has some other engagement and she wants to leave. So ma'am, any quick comment as a final remark from your side before you leave?
Yeah, the final thing which I would like to say that that we have to revive these MSMEs who are the backbone of any country. And for that, this is an opportunity where we can tell them, because when one is in a crisis, if we give them advice and also opportunities, because always we know that threat brings opportunities. That's yes, right. Absolutely. So the strength and weakness part we have to work. So that's the sort we have all studied. So what is the strength? By bringing the ideas into the floor, by building the capacity, by giving access to fund for these MSMEs, and the weaknesses, though whatever we have, the MSMEs, we can always do it by if the government come forward, which I think Bangladesh and any other government will do it, but we need advocate and seminars and webinar like this so that we can take it forward. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you very much for your piece of advice. Really appreciate your efforts in bringing the women entrepreneurs from Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I request Professor Goutam to respond to the question of increasing chunk of MSMEs in India because of new definition, and how can we ensure the sustainable development of them. I will appreciate, sir, if you can give a focused answer to the question, because the question is very, you can say, sir, you are muted. Sir, you are muted. You have to unmute, please.
Yeah. Now, this is something we have been talking about for last so many years. We said the definition of MSME itself is not right, because we have been, we have defined MSME based on the investment in plant and machinery. That's the wrong definition. And because what we saw is that people are investing and then they are moving away, and the tax-free zones and all that. It didn't really work, because people went and invested in a tax-free zone, and when the that limit is over, then they moved away. So this is a very right move which the government has done recently, bringing turnover into play.
Yes.
Now, this is a certainly from all chambers, from all universities, from everywhere we have been talking about it. Now, we thank that this change has been made. Now, this gives a lot of opportunity in the sense that it will unveil a new area of a PPP model, private partnership models with the public-private partnership models with the MSME units. It will also give rise to an enormous opportunity for a drive which we can take inside the MSMEs for education and learning. And the Quality Circle Forum of India, where I am the chairman of the Kolkata chapter, we have taken a drive of educating 1 lakh MSME. Mission 1 lakh, we are saying, and then probably mission 1 million. So these are the opportunities now because we can understand where is the real problem, who is performing, who is not performing. In earlier definition, we never knew who is performing. So this, according to me, will give a opportunity in terms of partnership.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Now I move to a question to Wilcox, that he was talking about some of the tools developed by UNDRR, particularly QRE. And I just have this question that what percentage of MSMEs have adopted this particular tool in Asia and Pacific regions? Do we have any data available on that? And what are the specific measures you have taken to promote these tools?
No, thanks very much, sir. No, unfortunately, we don't have the figures on how many SMEs in the region or the percentage that have actually used the tools. All we know is that about 20,000 people have accessed the tools on the website and downloaded it. But we still need to do more research in terms of who is actually utilizing the tools for to build their resilience. We have, as I said, taken a lot of efforts to make sure that the tools are translated into the local languages. So far, we've translated them into 11 languages, including Hindi and Nepali, as well as many others in the region. And to me, that's really important, and that these be promoted through the various networks such as Arise India, who have been doing so, Connecting Business Initiative, ADPC's iPrepared network, etc., to actually get the word out that these tools are there and that they're available. Because if they're not in the local language, then when we start dealing with the informal and the micro level businesses, then it's less likely that they'll be used unless they're in that local language and that easy to understand. So I think, we need to continue additional translations as well as promoting through networks, through our partners, both in country and at the regional level.
So I think we need some kind of a research also on the impact of these tools, that how MSMEs could build the resilience, which Mr. Mitra was also talking, that whether these resiliences are being implemented with the help of these tools. Surely. I have one question to Aslam Sahab also. He gave us a 5-point agenda about revival of MSMEs. And that's so nice of him, that becomes a kind of a textbook material for many of us. But I just want to know whether you can prioritize those 5-point agenda, or they are in random order, or they all need equal importance. I need your comment on that.
Thank you, Agrawal Sahab. I think those 5 points that I presented, it certainly can be prioritized based on the geographical locations that you're talking. If you really ask me, of course, when I'm very much an Indian, but have been based here in Bangkok for almost 16 years. If you really ask me today, even if you ask me some data, that how much percentage of the MSMEs has been able to use this QRE tool, I can able to tell you. But numbers really not important at this moment. What is really important is that, has they been able to recover, and how quickly, because time is more important. And I think Mr. Mitra mentioned, time is more important. 2011 flood, if today's data shows that more than 40% of the SMEs could not recover. It is the concern for us. So for those 5 things, I think more and more which is coming up, I think from Bangladesh example and others, that perhaps outreach, reaching out to them. So it's not important that how many people have used the QRE tool, but it's more important that how do you reach to them. So UNDRR gives a platform for multilingual options, because we are again talking about within India, if it requires 30 to 35 languages.
Yes.
I think, Professor Banerjee mentioned about capacity building, because we really have to build capacity. So this comes first, but without a government support, without a government institutional mechanism, fiscal provisions, I don't think that anything can go that far.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate Mr. Mitra also gave us the concept of resilience. He was talking from the perspective of a large company like SCL. But I was just wondering whether companies like SCL, which is a leader in the technology, UNDRR having the experts on the field of disaster management, if the matchmaking of these types of organizations can happen, and then you go for something which is helpful to the MSMEs. So how is it possible, Mr. Mitra? Can you throw some light on that?
So we have a wing, which is our CSR wing, which actually is so HCL Technologies is under a larger umbrella company called HCL Corporation, and the CSR wing sits on top of the house, which is constantly exploring opportunities to create engagement with the larger ecosystem. DRR being one of them, but obviously we are heavily invested into education to begin with. So that's something which we can definitely explore from that vantage location. And I know Colonel Bhagat, as part of Arise India, has also reached out to HCL historically to play a role in the development of the ecosystem. So that's something which can obviously be looked at, Professor Rajat Agrawal.
Thank you very much, sir. And with this, we are almost coming to end of our session. And with us, one of the pillar of this entire webinar, Professor Mahua Mukherjee, is also here. And Professor Mahua, she was professor and head of the department at Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management. She is basically a professor of Department of Architecture and Planning at IIT Roorkee, and she is Sadri's Secretary General, and she is also a board member of Gadri, and she is representing IIT Roorkee in various platforms which are related to disaster mitigation efforts. And I request Professor Mahua to summarize the whole discussions and give her point of view also, as well as a organizer of this particular event, propose word of thanks. So, ma'am, you have multiple responsibilities. I invite you to the stage.
Thank you, Professor Rajat Agrawal. I hope I am audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are perfectly audible.
So I not only have the responsibility to thank all of you, I am also having the responsibility to pull the curtain on this particular program. And this program, frankly speaking, we really thought about it a lot, and probably there was certain glitches at the during the program, but then also I will say that we could really, whatever type of discussion we were expecting, that we could see. So from that perspective, I will say that it's a really, really very good starting of WCDM. And so let me start my thanks also so that I can relate that how our program is also related to many contributors and stakeholders, which are really, really very important and necessary for any disaster mitigation and resilience initiatives. So for this particular program, first of all, I will like to say Thanks to WCDM, World Congress for Disaster Mitigation, and Professor Dr. Pj Dhaar Chakravarti and his team, they have done wonderful, they have taken wonderful initiative. This is the 5th one, and we are so very happy that we could start the first pre-conference event. We are really, really very thankful for that, that the scientific community agreed upon this program, because this is a very, very, as the panelists already discussed and audiences, participants, they will agree that livelihood, economy, everything is so very important for society to think about sustainability and resilience. So green recovery of MSMEs are so very important aspects, and we are happy to start the WCDM pre-conference with this very important issue. And here I would also like to bring the support, reference of the support we received from IIT Roorkee, not only the Center of Disaster Mitigation and Management, but the entire IIT Roorkee platform. Our director, our entire administration was so very happy, and gladly we are now knowledge partner to WCDM. Arise India, it's I really need not to really mention it again and again. You could see how many different ways they are partner to the journey of the resilience, and especially for MSME. And here probably I would like to introduce another organization, SADRI, South Asia Alliance for Disaster Research Institutes, which are very much having a regional focus on the South Asia. And I believe, Rajat, many of these discussions are going to help SADRI a lot later on, because the people, the panelists who are here today, they are not only the resource persons for their own organizations, but they can really be also very much helpful for the South Asia region as well. So we from SADRI also will be very much thankful in later period also to be in touch with all of you. And our esteemed panelists, the so nice way you people presented your views, and which actually are enriched from your own experiences, which are many a times beyond the geopolitical boundary. And that has helped us to understand the different shades of these challenges, where we could see that MSMEs are facing challenges not only in the post-pandemic era, but pre-pandemic era positions. Those challenges are also, we are not forgetting. So we have to really understand both the part of this challenge, business competitiveness, and the communication to the people. That has come up so nicely. That is so very important. And environmental, economic impact of MSMEs, that has come back again and again in the panelist discussions. Geopolitical context, Selima Ahmad ji has brought that for the Bangladesh so nicely. And I could also see HCL being a very, very high-end multinational company. They actually facilitate many such MSMEs. So we could see so many different array of this particular experience from our panelists. And not only you people brought the challenges, you also showed us the hope, how we can really go forward, our short term, medium term, and the long term. So that way, I will say, even if it is a very, very short period, but we got so much of good inputs, and especially the people here who are going to work, because it's an action-oriented topic. I believe whether it is Timothy, whether it is Aslam, whoever, everyone brought something which you can add in your own activity program, and it is going to help you. And the learning from this session, I will say that we will carry it with us for long. And we are really thankful to you all for showing various shades of your experiences and opportunities again and again. That is very important, not to only showcase the problems, but also say that how to solve it. So business continuity plans and other things you've discussed. Let me thank you on behalf of the organizing committee and the audience, especially Professor Rajat Agrawal, Ms. Selima Ahmad, Mr. Timothy Wilcox, Professor Goutam Gupta, Mr. Aslam Perwaiz, and Mr. Anubhav Mitra. You really brought a very, very wonderful, lively panel. And I believe that everybody agrees with me. And I really thank you all for accepting our invitation. Despite your busy schedule, you gave us time for this 2 hours program. We are really thankful to you. And we believe that in future also you will be with us, whatever initiatives we are going to take. And the audiences, you are the reason for the program. So no amount of thanking you will be sufficient to tell that how thankful we are for your presence here. Let me thank our youngsters, Annie, Shivani, Suparna, and the tech team, Sandeep, Partha, Anshul, who really brought this communication, this high-tech communication on the visual platform possible. Brigadier Khanna, I cannot stop myself specially mentioning your contribution. I know the contribution Arise India is continuously doing for many different forums, especially for MSMEs. But on a professional and personal note, I would like to really mention your spirited encouragement, guidance, your knowledge towards this particular MSME, this aspect, agenda, as well as this particular program. So thank you. Thank you, Brigadier Dr. Khanna. And I really wish all this learning of us will help us in immediate actions, because knowledge part we can see from our today's program also, knowledge part we are quite enriched. So for the activity part, I believe that the MSMEs get, I wish also MSMEs should get their due acknowledgement, which has been discussed, and also get the share of opportunities to be green in every shade possible. Because greening doesn't only mean to have the environmental greening, but also the other aspects, and everything is very much necessary for MSMEs. I would like to say thanks and pranam. Thanks.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your closing remarks. If our all the panel members can open their cameras, we can have a group photograph quickly before we finally sign off. I request Khanna sir, Chakravarti sir, Sandeep, if you can arrange a group photograph quickly before we close the meeting.
Yes, sir.
I can't see Brigadier Khanna and Suparna.
It is not. It is not. In fact, no. I'm trying to. In fact, no. It's not. Can from that only they can do it from there, Sandeep?
Shri, can you open Brigadier Sir's? Can we do that? The video.
Of course, here, of course, I am trying it. It's not opening up. Just a minute. Yeah.
Let others also be visible, our support team.
Yes, so we are just arranging the screen so that everyone can be in the frame.
Yeah, now I can see Khanna sir also.
Yes.
But I can't see Suparna and Sandeep people.
I'm okay, ma'am. No problem. It's fine. Let's just.
Thank you. I think done.